episode 51 of China Talk. It looks like Demacia Cup is a thing of the past. It just ended, and surprise, surprise, EDG is the winner. But we're going to start it off by really just listing out the teams, how they did, and it's going to be in order for the most part of how they got eliminated. So, of course, we start with World League. They had the hardest card. They had to avenge their brethren in World League Future. How did they do?
They had to avenge their brother.
And their
Future.
former brethren that they beat to get here in Masters 3.
Yeah, they
Oh
had
my
all
God.
of the WE, like the entire franchise.
Just
all their hopes
grouped
and
up.
dreams.
Rested in World Elite.
Yeah. What was their? What's the World League motto again? What's on their jersey? Something about dreams.
Keep your
Keep your
dreams.
dreams.
Keep your dreams. That's exactly what they were thinking when they all just got eliminated.
Which is
Just-
funny because Master 3 has a benched jungler named Dreams.
The moment that "Keep Your Dreams" logo came out, I was like, well, it would have been great if they kept dreams, but they didn't keep their dreams.
Gandhi's better probably, but
Yeah.
let's talk about this set. What were our expectations going into this set, first of all, though? EDG versus WE set. Because I think before we said that it was going to be pretty close. So.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a lot closer than it was, so I was totally wrong on that. Because I actually thought, just based on previous history in playoffs, that WE somehow, and like even earlier this split, WE somehow managed to take a few games off EDG, but that did not happen. I was completely wrong.
Yeah. It's like a completely different story. I don't know, it is weird that, like, I mean, obviously they're nowhere near close to each other's skill and, like, actual just team dynamics and stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't expect it to be a 3-0 shutout, that's for sure. Granted, some of the games weren't, like, terribly one-sided, but I don't know. I thought World Elite, like, a lot of the things that they looked like they were getting better in for LPL and stuff, they kind of, like, backtraced. Like,
Yeah.
you know, team fighting was, like, really, really bad. And then they were just getting, like, humiliated by EDG early from jungle ganks and stuff, and it was just like such a huge backstep, I feel. It was kind of weird.
Well, WE has this really bad habit of drafting compositions that make zero sense, and they just have everyone on some kind of carry type champion that will outplay.
Like the first game.
Yeah, like the first game, like the second game, like the third game. I guess like the exceptions are in the second and third game, Aluka played
Aluka.
Nautilus and Shen. So okay, woo.
Hey, that's a meta champion.
But the first game, well, he played meta champions all three.
Yeah, the
games.
first game, like, literally there was, like, no engage whatsoever. It was just a bunch of carry champions. I mean, I guess, like, Spirits was, like,
Conan
somewhat gagey,
played
but...
Morgana, so that's about it.
Yeah, and I think he did, like, literally nothing that game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ended with
I mean,
0-0-0
sounds about right.
as
Yeah.
his score.
Yeah.
But it's funny because in LPL, WE does that shit all the time, right? But they don't get punished for it. Like, I remember actually watching with Raz, watching the WE versus Snake set the week before, and just being like, if they win with this composition, man. And then they did, and it was awful. But
They shouldn't have won, but
their approach to drafting seems to be, we'll just pick our best champions.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think in Game 3 they had an actual composition. It was like a Protect the Vayne comp.
So is this? I guess the answer to this is gonna be a yes. But is this really going to be a learning experience for World Elite? Will they take anything from this game? I know after the game the players looked quite upset. Obviously they're gonna be upset because they had actual expectations of moving, or at least just putting up a fight.
Mm-hmm.
So is this the point in which World Elite's going to be like, well, maybe... Because you can see it throughout the drafting, like throughout the set, that they were actually starting to pick reasonable champions, I'd say. Is that the starting point going forward, I guess, moving on towards the LPL, like I guess they don't even have a chance. Do they have a chance, actually, at the playoffs?
Not... I mean, we said this last split, right? And then they managed to eke in. But I think the problem with WE and your question is, are they going to learn from this? I still maintain that there's only so many avenues they can explore with the people they have on the team right now. And I still don't see, like, even for as long as this team has been together since, like, their IAM debut and then going back into LPL and managing to make playoffs, I still don't see them coming together as a team. Like, as we mentioned, their team fighting was, really bad still. And that's something that you can't do in the LPL and really be able to get anywhere. So aside from Spirit, again, being able to just, like, hard carry them on Gragas or Nidalee, I don't see them being able to make playoffs. I mean, it's not mathematically impossible as far as I know, but it's like to get the 2 O's they need is going to be incredibly difficult.
And this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think Spirit has been less consistent and less just overall hasn't had as much to bring to the table every game. I'm not gonna say, oh, Spirit is the reason they're losing, but I just like
he's definitely not as good as Spring. Like Spring was like a whole different beast.
Spring, Spring he just every game could go man mode and hard carry, and this Summer feels like he has those games, but he doesn't bring that forward as consistently.
I also do think that people are starting to provide countermeasures against Spirit though, so that he can't do those things. So, I mean, if you take out that part of the teams when conditions really screws them over, and also, I mean, it's really hard to answer the question like, will they learn from this? Because like they should, but history shows that they won't. Just because, I mean, I feel like
think they have options.
I feel like Global Elite has some of the most draft freedom out of any team, based on how teams draft against them, and then even with that, they can't formulate good enough compositions or things that work. So, I mean, it's not going to get any more lenient as time goes on. It's only going to get more difficult, especially against other competing teams that would prefer to. I mean, would also want to be in the playoffs. You know, so I don't know. I can't see any logical reason it would get any better from here.
And so, speaking of teams that will probably not learn anything from this tournament, Vici Gaming faced IG, and did they really face Invictus Gaming? Did they really?
It was a 3-0 closeout.
Yeah.
It's a tie. Zatai managed to sneak into their base and give
Mata
appendicitis for a 3-0 closeout.
So Mata got assassinated. No, he had some unfortunate hospital, visit. So Vici Gaming had to forfeit this match. At first, when I heard this, when I heard that this happened, I was like, "Is this real? Did he really actually have appendicitis?" I
had this conversation with Kelsey, and I was like, "So." When I first heard that, I was like, "Oh, whatever. Like they're just making something up." But then she brought up the point that like appendicitis is something that's really specific and that you can actually like check on. It's not just like, oh, he has mystery illness.
He's injured.
He's not gonna.
Now seems like a good time to check in.
Yeah. So I think that was a good point. Like, and obviously then they showed pictures from the hospital, and I felt like a terrible person for not initially believing it. But
we have to be skeptical, is what I've realized with certain announcements. It's just you just can't trust some of them. Well, but
either way, throughout the course of the tournament, there was absolutely nothing we could have learned from the team because their literal only set was against Young Glory. So
nothing.
There's one thing that we can learn from them.
Learn
about them, which is that they're probably in huge trouble, because I feel like Mata is really the only good player at his position that they have right now. So,
how serious is appendicitis, by the way?
Usually, you just get your appendix removed and then you're back.
But you're still
right? You're still in pain.
I think you're still in pain, and there might be an issue with like him being sedentary for the weekend. Like, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was out for this weekend, but he'd probably be back by the next week at the latest. But even so, it's just like
that's still a week that they like desperately need him,
and they might bring him in anyway. It's just like it's
not
just
looking good
even
then.
if they have
Only if they
mono.
wrap him up in like a cast. I mean, it doesn't even have to be relevant to the injury. They just have to like wrap him up in a cast made of dollar bills.
Like, how do
That
we
helped, like,
feel
the
about Vici Gaming right now? Like, because I kind of have gone on a rant about this, but
Yeah.
I just
Scrambled.
I don't think they're good. I think they're gonna lose their playoff spot. So
Well, Vici has to go up against IG next week, and then they have to go up against. Oh, that's kind of funny that they're going up against. They're actually going to face IG.
they're actually
you can't get out of it.
they can't escape Zatai's like yes.
The ties tears.
Yeah, and there were a lot of people who said, "Why can't they just like a last minute sub, something like that?" It's like, you really that team without
that's not
Mana.
gonna,
And
that's
What
not
are
gonna
what are they
work.
gonna do?
They've already had so many issues with substitutes. Like, that's kind of why I'm looking at that team and like so we joke around about the whole like Amy's revenge thing, right? And we're going to be talking about UP next, but like in comparing them just to their closest competition, so Unlimited Potential, like Unlimited Potential has more of a team identity, and they've actually been playing together. Like, even if that team identity is just hard, like manipulating them, like manipulating all four other players to try to like win games, like that's more than Vici has, to be honest. Like, they just look so uncoordinated and not like they can't play in the manner that they wanted to, which was kind of out rotating people and doing small skirmishes instead of 5v5 fights. And when they can't do that, their talent that they have, like, it's really difficult to work with and come up with another identity with Dandy in top lane and then the rest of that team.
Well, just like looking through RNG, and I'm just looking through basically the matchups for the upcoming weeks up until like week 11, and it's not looking good for RNG or UP in terms of their matchups.
Yeah,
so
UP's got a lot of really hard matchups.
like both teams, not only do they have a lot of hard matchups, but they directly face Vici. So, I mean, they might just win like 2-0 Vici. You never know. Like, that's actually kind of probable.
Yeah.
But the rest of their matchups are just going to be really downhill. While Vici actually has decent matchups, I think they should be fine.
How do we preface the decent matchups? Is IG really a decent matchup for Vici?
Okay, not so much IG, but they have to go up against King. Snake is going to beat them. They have to go up against M3. That's like going to be decent. And then they have to go up against, of course, UP.
Really?
M3 has been playing. I mean, Condi has been playing well. Like,
I do
Nade's
think
been showing up.
the best like Vici style does counter M3, which is if you just avoid fighting them. But at the same time, like, how good has Vici been at doing that? Which,
yeah,
the answer is not super good lately.
And then Vici has their last game against LGD, who is in 7th. So I think they're either going to be looking to they're going to be happy like keeping their spot. So I think they're probably either going to sack or go up. So it's like it's going to be an easy game simply because of like rankings.
I just want to explain why I'm low on Vici Gaming right now, which is the narrative around Vici Gaming is that they're this rotation-based team that's not that good at team fighting because they have like not the best talent in their carry roles. And they're really good at moving to objectives, avoiding fighting, manipulating the lane swap to get advantages on their top laner, things like that. But lately, when I see them play, they aren't even that good at that anymore. They're like making the wrong objective calls, like even against Xiaogu, which historically hasn't been a team that we've credited for a lot of that. Map movement sophistication, I think, got the better of them in terms of objective prioritization. Using their mobility better. And for me right now, they're not the best rotation-based team in the league.
Yeah.
No. Not at all. I mean, like, that would be a huge stretch. Like, calling them rotation-based is true, but it's kind of like trying to find a comparison to make here.
Well, that's a lot of the narrative that I keep hearing, which I want to challenge and say no, they're not the best rotation-based team in the league.
For me, I feel like you can kind of
like
draw
I think LGD, Chaogu are even better than them.
Yeah.
OMG has had some sophisticated movements. Like, I wouldn't say they're better at the rotation game than Vici, but I think that in terms of being able to challenge Vici Gaming in the objectives, and know where Vici Gaming was going to move, was what allowed them to 2-0 them. So
it's something that we see often, though, with teams like smarter teams or teams that rely on that knowledge. Kind of reminds me of like SK season 4, I think. They were a really strong team. Alliance was a team that had like great mechanics, but they didn't have but you know what? People learn that movement. But you don't know, you can't learn how to be better players, I suppose, or at least not that quickly.
Well, another thing about like people saying that they're a rotation-based team, I still think it's primarily based on last split and then the beginning of this split when Dandy was still in the jungle. Like, that's huge to have him missing. And then to think that Mata won't play like even 1 week that's like the other part of their brain, right? So who on that team is going to be controlling what Vici actually does? Like, is Dandy gonna just try to manipulate the entire team from the top lane? Like, I'm not sure how that's gonna work. And then who would even be stepping in for Mata? Because obviously they lose, like if they are that kind of smart team like they were previously in spring, they need a brain. And I don't see that team doing anything if Mata isn't there, especially with Dandy in the top lane.
Yeah. And even if Mata is there, though, like...
Yeah, even if Mata is there, they've struggled since they had to take Dandy out of the jungle. Like, that was a huge part of their rotations, and their vision control, and the way that they could move around the map was made possible because of Dandy and Mata working in tandem.
And World 6 and Dandy are doing okay, but they've even started moving away from the lane swaps that they were successful with. Like, they've done a lot of direct matchups lately, which is... maybe because they're trying to use Dandy's mechanical skill, but it isn't really working out for them.
Yeah. And so, off that depressing note, we move to an upside. Oh, okay, that's so bad. Whatever. Unlimited potential. UP.
The potential is literally unlimited.
Yeah. Unlimited. Well, they faced Snake, and they didn't turn out well for them, but they did take a game off for them. So how did it turn out for them other than a loss? Like, did they perform a lot better than we thought they would?
So
no, I don't know. I think taking 1 win is like good, I guess, but the problem is that I really wanted to see this team play a best of series against more than one LPL team, but they only played. I mean, they played it. Wait, no, they did play against King.
Yeah,
does that count anymore? Okay, it
does. I don't know if that counts. That series was really sad.
I had to look at the bracket, and they actually crushed that set pretty hard, if I remember correctly.
That's because like after the first game, Korn's Magical Adventure, Zero like pretty much rage quit the rest of the set.
That was like not even a set. That might as well just be listed as an FF, just like VG. I mean,
it pretty much was. So.
That was literally just the FF that 20 minutes, like 20 minutes of the set, not even just of one game. That was just.
I mean, they looked okay, but I mean, the problem is that they kind of. I mean, even though they look pretty good, they still kind of like look where they belong in terms of the LPL standing. Like, I can't see them aside from Vici, obviously.
Yeah.
I can't see them really doing better against any of the other teams that are ahead of them in LPL. But their set against Snake was fairly decent. Although I do feel like their win against Snake was a lot in part of Snake's mistakes and not just UP playing really well, so that's another caveat.
I want to say the interesting thing for me about Unlimited Potential is their ability to identify sort of the crutches and the things that other teams rely on and try to debilitate those and to take like those things that they're good at away from them. In the first 2 games, which were arguably extremely one-sided, Snake was able to like second rotation Janna pretty effectively. In game 3, Unlimited Potential picked it in their first rotation on purple side. to deny the pick, and they had a lot more success sort of resetting fights, making sure that Snake didn't get the disengage in what they wanted, and that Snake couldn't pick the fights that they wanted by taking those picks away. And then in the fourth game, they straight out banned it, and it was much closer. And they also took away the Lulu, which actually Snake did pretty well with. So they just went for more disengage-based style. They controlled the movement speed on their map. They picked Sivir in game 4. So it was just, again, it was showing what unlimited potential is good at. I think.
Yeah. I think UP, like, and I don't know, I'm probably gonna draw a lot of, like, hatred for this comparison, but I think UP reminds me a bit of, GE Tigers last split. Not according to, like, how they've actually been performing in terms of win-loss record. But,
oh,
like,
you mean their support is good and the rest of the team is a disaster? No, okay, that was weird.
I guess there's that too. No, what I mean is that I feel like their strengths, and when they're actually able to win, it's because they are a really smart team when it comes to preparation. So in order to be able to get a win off of some of the top tier teams, they're really, really going to have to research. And we even saw this in this Snake series, like Kelsey mentioned. I think the problem with a team like that is that they're very easily dealt with when it comes to playoff time, and they have to face, like, just an out-and-out superior team. And, like, I would even consider Snake just an out-and-out superior team. Like, when, when Flounder is not just building random crazy stuff and, like, they're doing... Like, when they're serious, they're a very strong team, in my opinion. And there's only so much you can do if you're just a preparation-based team.
And
like, I know that, and, like, analog is kind of weird, but, like, that is what they remind me of in terms of the attitude that they go into games. They don't really tend to focus on their own weaknesses as much as they tend to focus on an opponent's weakness and then how they can try to overcome that. I'm not saying that's the wrong way to approach the game, but I'm saying if that's the only thing that you can do, then you probably will get... you'll get dealt with pretty handily in playoffs, I think.
It's... If we talk about the seeding, right, we can say that I think that they'll make playoffs, but even if they do, the best they can do is, like, 7th or 8th. Yeah. And so how far are they going to get against, like, the 1st or 2nd seeded team? They're not. So
nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, woo, we don't have to play relegation.
Yeah, I mean,
which is good, but for them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they have, like, the best upset potential in terms of, like, 1 or 2 games, but beyond that, it's like, once they're red and they're out of the strategies that they prepared for, it's just kind of, they just kind of feel like a standard team that is really easy to deal with, honestly. So,
all right, enough of UP for now. That team, will probably speak a lot more about them as the season winds down. So, everybody's favorite team. I'm gonna save that one for last in this here set of losers, and it's LGD. What happened, guys? What happened?
I actually really liked the OMG versus LGD set in terms of the map play, because I think LGD reacted really well to when OMG wants to go here, and there were a lot of instances where LGD would send focus here, and then OMG would send focus to another. So from that perspective, I thought the series was interesting and worth watching, even though it's a 3-0. And even though we have Godby on 80 carry. If you just like that kind of play, though, I thought it was a good series. Like, it was interesting for me. Again, OMG, we'll talk about them more. Their drafting was interesting at times. But they, like, a big problem was Xiong was able to get Maokai in 2 of the 3 games. So...
You gave him 2 champions. Or at least 1 of 2 champions.
And they gave OMG Sivir in 2 of the 3 games as well. So it's kind of like, why?
They were like, it's North, guys. Don't even worry about it. He doesn't even play that champion. I'm pretty sure he's just a Jinx player.
I've never heard of this guy.
Whatever. I mean, they're not playing UCI. It's their strategy dependency. Like, it's funny because LGD was one of the first teams, like, unless you count King, right? Which who counts King? To identify that OMGs, you need to ban Maokai and Sivir, or deny Maokai and Sivir. They were, like, the first team to do that. And they 2-0'd them in LPL doing that. And then they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna let these champions through. It's cool. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe they were like, well, we don't have a chance to win. I mean, that sounds terrible. I don't...
Remember, guys, you can't be a true champion. You can't be a true Demacia Cup winner unless if you challenge them on Maokai and Sivir. That's the whole...
Is that how it works?
Don't run away from it.
It's like, I don't think their mid-sub plays anything except for Victor at this point.
Yeah, I was wondering, actually. How did you guys feel about Yellow?
It's all yellow.
Okay, for stand-in. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Like, I thought some of his team fighting was good, but again, when we were talking about the set that they played before, the round of 16 game against Xiaogu, where I was like, oh, his team fighting is actually really good on Victor. This isn't bad. And then fucking Wayless comes in and he's just like, yep, I'm just gonna solo this guy in lane with the same champion, and this is how you play this, and this is why.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's just, again, he's fine. He's not Godby.
Okay.
And that's the thing, I think. Like, because I actually thought LGD would beat OMG, and we're going to talk about OMG later and why they were surprised, but I think taking Godby out of the mid lane is more significant than not having Imp on AD carry for that team.
Mm-hmm.
For a few different reasons, just for what Godby does for the team in terms of centering the mid lane, providing vision, etc., stuff like that. And then the fact that he's just such a dominant force, and it's a lot harder to carry from the AD carry position in general in the meta right now.
He's a lot better AD carry mid than bottom.
Yeah, like, that's the thing.
Like, mechanically, he wasn't even that bad. Like,
no, he was
yeah.
fine. Like, that's the thing. Like, he was fine as an AD carry. Like, I can't really say anything about his AD carry play. He was fine. And this isn't me shitting on Imp either, because I think Imp has done really well. But the thing is, mid lane is like a more significant carry position right now than the AD carry position is. And so when you take arguably one of the best, if not the best, mid laner in LPL, and then you take him out of that role, like the team's going to suffer. I mean, it's kind of similar actually to like taking Dandy, who is just a phenomenal jungler, and putting him in the top lane. Like, it's not that Dandy is an awful top laner, just like it's not that Wayless is an awful AD carry, but I underestimated, like, when I was making my predictions, I definitely underestimated the significance of removing Wayless from the mid lane.
And I think there's that, especially if you look at the gold distribution. Fun fact, Godby is the mid laner in LPL who receives the largest proportion of his team's gold. So he is, like, that's where they put their resources. They're typically, like, standing behind him as the carry force. But the other factor that's worth noting is I think we just also underestimated OMG in terms of their ability to play like a team. Yeah. Because that's not something they've been doing. So,
no, I think like, the thing is that, just, well, I mean, Godby
like, we valued
carry
team play over individuals, anticipating that OMG wouldn't have team play.
Yeah.
Alright, Mike.
Godby moving to AD carry and the team having a sub, like, was a lot worse for the team's dynamic than while OMG, even though they subbed out Uzi, it was arguably an upgrade to their team dynamic, even if they lost the raw AD carry ability. And so I think that like outweighed, like, I mean, the difference in LGD outweighed the changes that were made to OMG, like, substantially, but at the same time, it wasn't like the set wasn't as like a closeout like the score would suggest either. So it's not like LGD got completely crushed either.
Yeah.
So I still think they did pretty well strategically, but I do think that did hurt a lot more than it appeared on paper. Especially, and it's like especially disappointing just because I feel like they did so well in that set against Xiaogu before this one. And so
Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard to tell where LGD stands right now because of this.
It's like, okay, you resolved your visa issues in time for Imp to show up, but then, like, he still hasn't fixed the overarching problem, so what was the point of eliminating one of the top 3 teams? Effectively 2 of the top 3 teams from the tournament. Like, what was the point?
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
What did we think of LGD's new jungler?
Xiaoxi.
Alright, Xiaoxi.
Because I actually thought he was an upgrade from TVQ in that he existed and didn't ruin team fights.
Because he existed.
He existed and he didn't ruin team fights.
When you're watching an LGD game and TVQ is playing, you can't not ignore him. He just, like, he stands out. It's like everything, it's, oh, that went wrong. Team screwed that up. TVQ feeding again, look at that. Whereas Xiaoxi, I felt like you could just kind of ignore him. He was just there.
Yeah.
Like
I really like that aspect of your article, by the way, Kelsey, where you just kind of pointed it out. It's like he did nothing. He was just not, and that was a good thing.
That was a good thing.
That's enough.
Well, I think we were talking about, like, the impact a star has on a team, so I feel like adding a star jungler to LGD could change them in a bad way. Just, like, moving their star from their mid to, like, the AD carry role. And then, whereas if you just, like, add an okay guy, like, they can keep the things that are good about them. And then...
Oh, but Kelsey, what's wrong with having a playmaker in every role in the game? I mean...
I don't know. Maybe we should ask OMG.
I'm sure nothing will work out. I mean, if you just had, like, Insec... Oh my god, if you just had Insec on LGD... And if you... Who else on that?
Speaking of people who stand out for feeding.
Alright. And moving on to... I don't even know if this is better or a little more depressing. Invictus Gaming. They moved on, of course, from the great forfeit win from Vici Gaming to face EDG in the next round. How inspiring was this game?
I feel like the set was actually more stompy than the OMG LGD set. Like, if you just watch the games, it was pretty bad. IG just looked lost.
Well, they had
both teams looked lost.
Yeah, they had the one game where they...
IG looked more lost.
Yeah.
I think, like, overall, in terms of both teams' team fighting coordination was, like, really off, except, again, the one game that IG managed to win.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, like, I don't know what's going on with IG, but it definitely seems like they haven't really resolved their, whatever is going on in the background of that team, unfortunately.
Here's a fun fact about Invictus Gaming. The past 2.5 years of LPL, they have placed top 3 in LPL Spring, okay? So they placed 3rd in 2013 LPL Spring, they placed 2nd in 2014 LPL Spring, and they placed 3rd in 2015 LPL Spring. In 2013 LPL Summer and 2014 LPL Summer, they didn't even make playoffs. So
they're already doing better than the previous iterations.
Because the playoffs... That's because the playoffs rung, like the playoffs requirement decreased. So that's the only reason.
Add more teams.
Yeah, and then IG will be able to make it. I want to root for IG. I really do, because I love, like, obviously I love Kakao and Rookie from Korea. They were on one of my favorite teams. And then I actually really, really love Zatai for, like, no reason now. But
does the tears break your heart?
I was really actually legit sad because he seems like he's trying, like, right? He has
so hard.
He's trying like other players, except he's bad and emotional.
Yeah.
It's like he worked so hard giving Mata appendicitis. He just, like, that was his breakthrough, and then for the rest of the tournament he was just tapped. He was like, I carried, okay, we're done.
He had that one, like, I'm thinking of a really specific fight in top lane where he had, like, like oddly good team fight targeting on Shen for like one
Oddly
section
good.
of one game, and then that was like his main contribution. Like the rest of the series, he was
He
just
stole
like
Baron with Shyvana.
yeah, that's true too. His Shyvana wasn't bad either.
Oh.
There you go.
But man, I want to root for IG. I really do. Like I want them to figure out their stuff. I definitely don't think that after having, I was hoping that Time would do well, and I thought he was like far worse than Kid was in terms of being able to have an impact in fights. Like there was a couple times where like he's just sitting there and he could have been auto attacking, or like his pathing was really weird and getting to team fights, and I was just like, what are you doing? Like I don't know. He just
do you think he can improve with time?
Oh my god, I was just about to say that instead of making a horrible pun.
I didn't know why you were laughing at first. It took like 2 seconds.
I was just about to say, I was like, instead of making a horrible pun, here's Time. I want you guys to tell me who Time is, and what role is he supposed to fill on this team. I'm going to start with Kelsey, by the way.
So, I think
this is directed at Kelsey.
What IG needs is just someone to inject a sense of purpose into their roster. So I feel like right now they're just kind of aimless. And the games that they won, it was like they had the cute compositions that that have made them look good in the past. Like the Echo composition, the Echo Vayne composition against EDG was actually pretty well thought out. Like EDG got all these really good power picks, and everyone on Twitter was exploding like, oh, this game is so over, EDG's draft is so good, and I'm just looking at it like, I actually really like IG's draft. It's kind of cute. It's got, like, the Echo plus Annie Engage. It's, like, super good dive, and then you've got Lulu and Shen for protection for Kid and Cacao, and it was effectively like a Jugger Echo comp, with Vayne being a misdirection. It was really cool. I liked it. And so that was the game they won, because they took initiative, they had a sense of purpose, like, they did pretty well. And then Cacao solo carried games on Echo, so that was one thing that was worth noting in the semifinals matches, where the team that lost eventually ended up losing the set. Where they won, they had Echo picks. So both ZZR and Cacao had a really large impact with Echo.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it was just like the first game to me was kind of like EDG saying, "Can we take this dragon? Are you guys okay with it?" And they would just like dance around the pit, and then IG would be like, "Yeah, it's all right, no worries, whatever." And then EG would just like dance around some more and be like, "Are you sure?" And then eventually they would commit to it. And eventually they would commit to it, and then EDG would take it, and then there was like a little bit of walking around, and it was just bad. That set was terrible to watch,
honestly. They just dipped their heads in dismay and went back to laning until the next
IG, the king of bleed. Like, that's just... I just love them because they love not doing anything when they're behind as a team. When they're ahead, they'll do they'll pull out so many moves. It's like, they can sometimes. No, but like when they're ahead, they can close out a game. If they're behind, they just don't know what to do. Not even that they don't know what to do, they won't do anything.
Yeah,
and that's why I really loved OMG, by the way. Regardless of how questionable their picks were, it's just they were like, oh, we're behind. Let's force an engage. Or let's try something. We have an advantage in this sense. We should maybe do something with it, possibly. They have answers. They create answers for themselves.
I think that IG does form compositions that don't really benefit from being behind either, though, just in the way they play. So it's like if they do get behind, like not only are they not good at playing from behind, but that they build compositions around being ahead. So, I don't know.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and then Cacao gets tilted and picks Nidalee every game. Yay!
Yeah. But the kitties, though. Alright.
I feel like...
Stop.
I don't know. I feel like that set was really, really bad, and that they played better, arguably, in the Snake set, but it still wasn't that great, because they literally just gave away the first 2 wins for free.
Yeah.
And then... I don't know. I feel like... Okay, so here's the thing is... Alright, well, first off, I don't really like Time over Kid, but I also kind of have an irrational, like... I don't know if I want to call it fanboyism for kid, but maybe I'm just like a kid apologist. But
Dirty
I don't
kid
know.
apologist.
I
I was an amazing apologist.
I thought Time was a lot worse than Kid, in my opinion.
I think he got, like...
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't
he
know if
got better.
was nervous or something, but, like, there were a couple... And it was... Like...
I think his last 2 or 3 games were better.
Yeah, they were the beginning games that I'm thinking of, but like I said, there were just times where he would not be in position to do damage, or he just wouldn't be auto-attacking for whatever reason.
Well,
That's
sometimes
not so
he'd be
much
two-
the third
sometimes he'd
game
be
when he
two
was
in
behind
position
like
to do damage.
60.
Yeah, like and then sometimes he'd be in the middle of the team fight, and it's like,
Run
well,
away
okay.
from me now, bitch. Oh wait, this doesn't work out so well for me. But no, I mean, I actually think that in the Snake set at least, they had like the right idea, but their execution was still bad. And it wasn't just like Time or anything. I think it was like multiple people on the team, including Cacao, because there was like a fight where IG had like a free pick on Martin, and Cacao just like straight up missed his ultimate barrel, and like they all flashed and like missed their ult, and then they just kind of like went back to lane and were like, all right, well nobody saw that. We're just gonna pretend it didn't happen and move back. And the worst part was that like Martin was on Jinx too, so it's not like he was on like a dash AD carry or something. This was like an immobile target that could have like they could have cut out and won like another one of their games. But I don't know, it was just really sloppy. And I think that more than just Cacao tilt in the drafting when things go wrong. Like I don't know, I felt like Zitai playing like Shyvana and Renekton was like really weird. I don't understand why he went back to those picks. Yeah. I mean, I think I understand why, but it just I don't know, the execution was really bad.
The Renekton one I don't get, so you're gonna have to explain that to me.
The Renekton one made no sense. I thought his Shyvana was...
Well, I think the Renekton might have just been like a, like I said, it was like a tilted draft, but it's also, I guess, like semi comforting on Zitai just because of his past, but I don't know. That might be a stretch. But and I honestly, I don't know. I feel like one of the games Snake just kept walking into Zitai's Shen and like feeding him relentlessly, and so that game, like, I don't even know if they deserve to have that win because it was just so stupid. But it was very entertaining to watch like a God mode Shen walk around like murdering everybody with Triforce.
R.I.P. Zitai's undefeated Renekton streak.
Oh, I didn't even know that. It's unfortunate.
He's played it twice.
How did Snake do? Like, Snake, obviously, I guess they lost to OMG, but like, was that? How did you guys feel about that game? How was it? Obviously, it was a lot more entertaining than IG versus EDG. But was there anything that we could take out from that one?
The Snake versus OMG stuff?
Yeah.
I know, it's just... For me, also, I think the reason why I'm not so quick to dismiss Time, even though I did have that tweet during Game 3 when he was like 60 ACS down on Twitter where I said, oh, rookie 80 carry power rankings, North, Martin, my sandwich, Time. But no, I don't actually want to dismiss him too much, just because I do feel like we saw something happen with ZZR, Snake's jungle, as the tournament progressed, where early on you really, like, you couldn't feel his impact at all. He actually had this game where he went 0-0-9 in a set where both, like, in a game where both used Fizz and Flandra's Azir had, like, 20 kills or something. It was just like, how do you even have a score like that in this game?
A spectator.
But I think you could feel his impact start to ramp up. Like in Game 2, he had that really great Echo performance. I think in the third place match, his Gragas was really great, and he just like kind of found himself and found his agency on the team over time. He had agency over time. No.
Get out of here with this. Get out.
But
don't pay for this.
So that's what I think was interesting about Snake this tournament, was witnessing like the evolution of that kind of evolve, where they had Martin and Martin just played safe.
Yeah.
And they had like this sort of triple threat out of top, mid, and jungle.
So of course they went into a third place bout on the last day of the tournament. IG versus Snake, and we saw a lot of first couple games weren't too good, but as the we saw
Well,
like
we didn't really
like a
talk
classic.
about the OMG versus Snake set, but
I mean, what was there to talk about? That's
well,
the real
OMG played more like a team again.
yeah.
North had a game where he went like ridiculously off
Hmm.
and had really good like top lane play, or not top lane, but you know he was in the top and he
Yeah.
1v3'd when they tried to gank him.
Hmm.
It was like doing B level. Where he flashed the flash
Uh,
from Flandre.
hmm.
Yeah, good stuff. Anyway, moving on. I guess we don't want to talk about this. I was very excited about this set.
Well,
I don't know,
that's
that's-
more OMG than
Yeah.
Snake.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more to
And
point out from
talked
OMG because
about
it's
it
like,
today.
hey, look, these guys off the team and their new AD carry's like really good sometimes and okay other times, but now they're actually a team. It's weird because we haven't seen them be a team. Last time they played before this, they just were randomly walking in the jungle and dying, like every single game. So
Yeah.
I guess
We
that's
didn't see much of Snake on that set. Well, we saw a
I
lot
was
of
surprised. Like, I think the thing about this set for me that was the takeaway was that I expected LGD to win because I expected OMG to be a train wreck, but I could see, you know, OMG beating LGD in this current state, but I was actually surprised by OMG beating Snake. And what
Yeah.
I felt was actually a pretty definitive set. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay, so, but do you think the Snake really did they ramp up, or was just the same Snake as they faced IG in the next set in the third place matchup?
No, because I do
I
think
think-
ZZR took more initiative over time. But
Mhm.
I said it again.
And I
Initiative.
thought that the Snake.
You can't make a pun out of ZZR. That's literally it's 3 letters. You can't do it.
ZZ Rat Portal.
No.
ZZ Tie.
Nope, not even gonna allow that.
Okay.
Okay, Emily.
I was just gonna say the thing that struck me about Snake, in my opinion, with this VCR and with Martin is that previously, and I don't know if they're gonna continue using them in LPL or not, but I did think it was interesting that previously when Snake was trying to figure themselves out and like doing random stuff that made no sense, they were still like they would pick like early game compositions, or they would pick like poke compositions, and then they'd like try to wait and then 5v5 team fight for no reason, and because that was their strength. And I think with ZZR and with Martin, they have a lot more potential to do stuff in the early to mid game, I noticed. So I think I'm curious to see if they do test out either of them or both of them together in the LPL, because I would like to see Snake try to actually do a lot better on some of those like early game, mid game compositions that they've kind of previously either just flat out like been terrible at, or have played them completely wrong in waiting for the late game and then team fighting. So like I thought that was an interesting takeaway from watching Snake in this tournament.
I do think you have to play, like, at least in terms of the style that they're going with, like, if you are going to go with that more early game focused style with CZR and having, like, this triple threat in the top, you do have to play Martin over Crystal. Because I don't think it was necessarily Crystal's fault that they lost those 2 games with him. It was like a UZI factor, you know?
No, but it did make me extremely happy that Crystal did not have good games, and like Martin went ham in all 3 of his games. Oh man, that made me so happy.
In defense of Crystal and UZI here, I think this meta is really bad for them. Like, that kind of sucks for them.
Yeah.
I think
They're like hard carry 80 carries that demand a lot of resources, and if you give them the resources, they'll carry the game, but the meta really doesn't suit that kind of style right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Emily?
there's I guess this is not really off topic, but something I want to bring up in relation to OMG too when we talk about North versus EZI. And in general, with so many teams in Demacia Cup using this opportunity to kind of like, you know, fudge their rosters around, try out new players, etc., etc. I thought it was particularly interesting in how teams are using the rotating roster. Like, as Kelsey pointed out,
this is a really, first of all, it's just a really difficult meta for AD carries overall. But then second of all, like the style of AD carry that UZI is, the style of AD carry that Crystal is, to some extent, like Deft is obviously like a lot more flexible than both of those two, but like he's still was primarily known for like those kind of late game carry, like, okay, I'm gonna skirt along the back line and then kill you with like Kog'Maw with Jinx.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really interesting to see teams using rotating rosters not to develop like specific strategies to throw opponents off, but to actually as an adjust to the meta, which is something that we really haven't seen like in other regions or even like in League of Legends in general. I think is really interesting that's developing in China from this tournament specifically is that the use of rotating rosters to overcome the players that have a problem with a meta shift. Like, I think the use of that is like fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I thought Snake's use of ZZR and Martin, and then obviously we're going to talk about North, who I thought was great.
Because we talked about like Beast moving on to the Nidalee, right, and trying to play more of these like carry style jungle champs, and I think that what we see Chaogu having a lot of success with like a carry jungle style. We see EDG having a lot of success with a carry jungle style, and then there's LGD doing weird things that don't make any sense because they have a crappy jungler and they somehow make it work anyway. But we're seeing like these top. These like really strong, and then even Master 3, I would argue that their success is off of their their jungler, like their increase in success. So you're seeing all of these sorts of teams have success with like focusing on beefing up their jungler and having a jungler with a huge early game impact, even though they are playing like some of these tanky weird champions. And so trying to move in that direction kind of makes some sense.
So the real question I want to ask you guys is Snake, or at least their new style, is it due to a meta shift or is it just due to a style shift? Because we now see a lot more carry champions coming out of Flandre, but is the new role or at least is the new role or at least the style of the team benefiting Martin simply because of the shift in the meta, or just the mentality that the team has in and of itself?
I think it's a mix of both, honestly. But I do think like the way that cause when Flandre initially tried to make this transition back into more carry oriented things, he was still playing like he was a frontline tank or whatever, and it was like really sloppy. Whereas now, if they throw him in carry champions, they're a lot better at setting up flanks with him. Where he's not vulnerable, but he can sneak around and attack other targets. But I also do think that he still does just Flandre things. He still does those, but I do think they're getting better at utilizing him on carry champions and not playing him in a way that he's more familiar with last split. But I mean, I don't know. I do also think that it's just Snake being smart with these roster swaps, and somewhat off topic, but in a way, I'm actually kind of glad that SKT started doing the Easy Hoon faker thing that pissed a lot of people off, and just in general with the roster swaps, because even though you could argue whether or not that was actually more efficient for the team or better for the team's longevity, and the fact set the precedent for other teams to start being more confident in trying those things. So ever since they've done that, we've seen so many teams experiment with this and use it like in a successful manner, and it makes like the dynamics of teams and organizations so much more interesting.
I think with SKT there was a difference in terms of they were trying to create like kind of like lines in hockey, or like specific shifts where they could outplay an opponent based on having like one or more strategies that they could rely on with an optimal roster A and an optimal roster B. But I think the coolest thing that I've seen out of Demacia Cup with both OMG and then with Snake is that they really seem to respond to specific meta shifts. So they're like, okay, if we come back into a meta where we need Uzi, where we need Crystal, we can still have them because they're really good at what they do. But then now we have North, now we have like a Martin, now we have ZZR that can have more of an impact in like the mid game, where Beast was trying to play Nidalee and a few other champions that it just was not working out okay, and he was still kind of playing for the late game anyway. So I think that specifically is like a really interesting nuance that came out of Demacia Cup.
I guess we're slowly shifting towards OMG now, but my question here is, what can North do, or at least what can UZI do that North can't do? Like, it feels like North has really done a stellar job throughout this entire tournament, based on champions like Jinx, for the most part. And I guess he does have a really, or at least a champion pool that...
He seemingly has a small champion pool. He's so far, we've seen him play Hyper Youth Gaming, and this weekend. Yeah. And also RNG one game. And
so he's played Jinx, Sivir,
and Callista.
Yeah. But I would feel like that's an upgrade from UZI's champion pool, wouldn't it be? Or at least what he's played during the season.
I think UZI can play a lot of different things. That isn't the question. It's more along the lines of how UZI plays those things. And I always think of... People think of UZI as this crazy guy doing the 1v5 outplays in the late game, but for me, UZI crushes his lane and uses that advantage. Like, he is probably the best AD carry in the world at literally contesting every CS in lane. Like, oh, you think you want that? Nope, you're getting in the face! And then he just, like, gets these really ridiculous leads, which is something definitely North isn't gonna do.
Yeah.
At least so far that we've seen from him. But I think that North has shown some definite positional upsides. He's obviously very new. He looks pretty young. So it's not as consistent, but he has these moments where he definitely looks more like a Sand style. Like, I refer to him as like Sand with a bite, where he is going to play like those positional style AD carries that, because the way I always talked about OMG in the old-timey OMGs, that they had like this triple threat top jungle mid, but then they had in the bottom lane, like, Sand would just be there and he would be slowly farming, and then eventually if shit hit the fan, it was like, go, we have a hyper carry.
Go get him.
Look at this. And he's not going to run at you, but he will slowly auto attack you to death if you try to run at him. It's pretty excellent. But
I also
I think that that's kind of a thing where they're going, but North is more aggressive as a player.
Yep. Emily?
I'd agree with that, and to piggyback upon that, I think it's what UZI can do at his most spectacular. I feel like he does require a certain amount of resources to do. So whereas North does not, so it gives them a lot more flexibility elsewhere. Like, I still think UZI is an excellent duelist. Like Kelsey mentioned, he crushes lane, he contests for everything, and then when he has those leads, he turns them into significantly larger leads while he's in lane as well, I think. And I don't see North doing that. However, I think that North just offers them so much wiggle room elsewhere on the map, and that's what's making the huge difference. Because, again, like, and I hate to keep harping on this, but I think the thing that OMG figured out, in terms of not only just within their own team dynamic, but generally, AD carry is just really difficult to carry from right now. So it makes a lot more sense to have the threat with Cool, to have the threat with Loveling, and then have North be able to stay safe and not take as many resources as UZI would have to do what he's best at, I guess, if that makes sense. I mean, you still have Jiang top, which is like kind of unfortunate. But
we're ignoring the giant elephant in the room.
That's
or the giant Nautilus, more or less.
Yeah, when you start talking about their finals performance, which is like, Xiang is only going to be able to do so many things on, like, what, 3 champions now? Like, 2 champions?
EDG
Nautilus, Maokai.
EDG just had to ban Ryze and Maokai.
Yeah.
He actually had some really good Ryze performances this tournament, which I thought was shocking. But they did. Well, I mean, he's a mid laner.
Well, he used to be a mid laner, so
but he didn't really play Ryze, I guess.
Yeah.
And this is one defense of Xiang that people give, is that he's played multiple roles. How can you say he has a weak champion pool? He has a weak champion pool in every role he plays. Like, it's not, you can't get around that. I think it's really unfortunate, because I feel like he learns champions slower than other people, and that might be the main disadvantage he has. So they keep role swapping him, which seems to be exacerbating the problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, if they just gave him a role to play, like, if they put him on mid in OMD, which I think Hark is really good. So there's...
Hark is really, you just, don't even have to.
But I'm saying that if, like, they hadn't gotten Hark right or something, and then they just put him on OMD as the mid laner, like, he could probably develop into, like, a really, really solid mid laner, with a fair, like, a reasonable champion pool, especially, like, Cassiopeia was big in the meta. That was always, like, his third champion that we never saw when he was the starting mid for OMG. Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just really strange. And apparently, some rumors I've heard is that they'll going back on the team if he makes it back to Challenger. But I just got a feel that even if Going never practices and just is playing with his stream honeys all the time, he's going to offer more options to the team than Xiang, who, if you ban 2 champions, you have to first pick the other one.
Yeah.
Which completely ruins their draft in some instances. And if he can't play, like, the big Shen, like, peel pick, like, that would have made, just having Shen, would have made so many of their drafts where they did have North on Jinx, like, so much better, just having Shen.
Yeah.
Or the fact that Loveland couldn't play Lulu and they were playing with Rengar. Like, I think you can play Rengar jungle just fine if you have a good Lulu player and you have, like, a Shen top. So...
Like, OMG drafts, when it comes to picking for Xiang in general, it just feels so telegraphed. Like, they early pick Nautilus, and you're like, no, that's not. No. I know. I understand Amazing plays Nautilus, but there's another player on this team that literally just lives on that champion. So they're not fooling anybody for the most part. So it's just they need a player who is flexible, just versatile.
And
just, I was can play champions.
And I was trying to defend Amazing, like, the entire series. Because I don't think Amazing is bad, and I think he gets, like, a lot of shit because he gets lumped in with Joy and Xiang, which I didn't even think Joy was that bad. Okay. And I don't, like, those two, they were fine, to be honest. And I think Amazing is fine. And actually, you can even argue that Amazing might be, in some instances, better than Cloud, because Cloud was not a good Annie player. Like, it was pretty funny. Like, Cloud was an atrocious Alistar player, and I don't think Amazing is a good Alistar player either, but I actually think he's better at Alistar than Cloud was. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen this guy play Alistar. Like,
it was
so there's...
Amazing had an uphill battle just to start with in terms of gauging his support play, just because of how disoriented OMG was as a team together, so it's really hard to gauge something like that on an individual basis.
But, again, it's like, why aren't you picking... I actually think... They over-fixated on the Alistar, which I don't think is really in his wheelhouse as much, when one of his best champions is Annie. And I think Annie is a champion pick that's actually really good against EDG's style of play, because it's one of those champions that you can do a lot of jungle invades with. And what does EDG live and die off of? Their jungler. So, I don't know.
So, go on, Emily.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think they were overly concerned with taking that pick away from Mako instead of trying to come up with something to counter it, which is like, if there's another fault of OMG's drafts in general, is that they, first of all, like, Xiang requires specific champions, but then also sometimes they just randomly fixate on, like, one thing that the opposing team does that they feel like they absolutely have to overcome, and they ignore, they, like, eschew looking at their own composition, as opposed to, like, refusing to deny the pick, which is kind of weird to me, because I feel like, especially with the things that they seem to have figured out this tournament in terms of adding North, in terms of actually looking like a team, and playing like a team, I don't feel like like, in my opinion, they don't have to rely on that. Like, they don't have to rely on, like, oh my gosh, we have to take Mako's Alistar away. Like, just focus on what you guys can do yourselves, as opposed to, like, tunneling on specific picks that your opponent tends to get.
So
I don't know if that's just me though.
Okay, OMG's drafting is atrocious. We covered that. We think OMG is a better team with North. Do we think that they should play North in LPL going forward, or do we think that they should go back to UZI?
Keep North.
Yeah, North for sure.
North.
I mean,
hashtag keep North.
I mean, when I mentioned that like they're dropping the hyper carry UZI for North, it's not even like a huge detrimental drop off. It's like North is still really good. It's just
he's not UZI.
He's not going to to crush lane.
Is anyone arguing that
so
North is a better player individually than UZI is, though?
No.
Is anyone saying that? I just wanted to make this very clear because I feel like people are going to be like, but UZI is so much better, and
UZI is like a fantastic player. The problem is you can't carry from the AD carry position right now, and in order for OMG to actually look like a team, unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say it, because I have this rant bubbling up about how they destroyed Starhome Royal Club, like UZI transferring to OMG this year
I don't
specifically.
think Starhome Royal Club would have done well this year either.
They would have.
No, they wouldn't have. I don't
well.
think UZI would have done well this year.
That's the problem. That's the problem with UZI as a player, is that he is so damn good. He is a really good player, and teams will obviously look to pick him up. But then they quickly realize when they have him that
you have to build a team around him.
You have to. He is the team. He makes it so he is the team. And suddenly it's just really hard to work with. And so I remember in Starhome Royal Club, they were obviously near the end of it going into Worlds that they were starting to distribute the gold a lot more evenly across the team. But was that an easy task for them to do? No, they literally had a tournament where they just got shafted because this guy picked Vayne, even though they had Lucian picked up because of whatever random.
Guys, Lucian jungle is totally a thing.
Lucian jungle had to get.
I just want to say that,
they had to play Lucian jungle because he was so set on playing Vayne. This guy is nearly uncoachable. Holy shit. So this guy has a one-track mind, so he kind of destroys the team. So he has to be the team. The team has to play around him. And so the fact that they put North in there literally is just like a breath of fresh air, because I was like, wow, you can actually play a different style, even though Cool may have his own issues that Cool is a different.
I feel like
top.
Cool is like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Diva, because he's like all this time he's always been the guy who seemed like really adaptable. He'll do what the team needs him to do. Like the meta shifted, okay, we can go and carry this game, and then I'll play this thing that snowballs him, and we'll do these jungle invades, and we'll put Loveling in the center. Maybe we'll play a composition around Sand, but when it got down to it, when the chips were down, Cool was the guy who was like, hold my beer, I'm carrying this. Suddenly we have this split where UZI gets more kills than him. The team is not about him. He tries to make these really, really big plays. The team is not backing him up. They're backing UZI up, and it's like he can't handle it. he snapped. So.
Yeah. He snapped in the form of a message to clear love. Yeah.
They're like the Chinese icons, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the rumor being at the end of the year, Cool really wanted to play with UZI, so now the rumor will be that it's clear love or bust.
So going into the grand finale, obviously, we've already spoken about it, I guess, for the most part, about OMG's issues going into this set. EDG versus OMG. Championships. EDG wins. 3-0.
Well, this wasn't the hardest stomp EDG's ever delivered to OMG in finals, but
no,
it was
was
pretty
not.
close.
I actually thought the first two games were okay, but the third game, they literally perfect gamed them. No dragons, no towers, no kills.
Yeah.
And the thing that made it really irritating that it was such a closeout, especially in Game 3, is because it didn't look like EDG was playing incredibly well either. It was just they made a lot of mistakes too, and they were still able to manhandle OMG. But
yeah,
it was just the drafting was bad, and then Cool played Ezreal earlier. Why wasn't he playing Ezreal in the set? Why were they just giving up random picks? I feel almost as if Cool will insist that he can play a champion when he can't, because he's had this problem in the past with Yasuo. This year it seems to be like Azir. Stop playing Lulu for the love of God. You've never been a good Lulu player. You're a perfectly serviceable Orianna player. If you need you're actually an excellent Orianna player. Almost every high caliber Chinese mid is a fantastic Orianna player. So just pop that in if you want to do something like that. If you're gonna go for a Rengar comp, it's perfect. Kitty ball. Let's go.
Kitty ball.
Kitty ball.
See, that's probably his mindset when he decided to ulti at the Alistar. He's like, I would put a ball on the Alistar. That seems like a proper decision to make. Like, why not just make Alistar super large? Oh, well, yeah. That game turned out pretty unfortunate, but EDG comes out the winner.
Drafting was just... It's like, we know we want to kill Deft. It was like what Emily, I think, said earlier about their drafts focusing on one thing and not necessarily... EDG's drafts were much more dimensional. They had peel for Deft and they had abilities to get to the backline. And then, the third game, OMG was all about getting into the backline and, hey, Jinx. That makes this perfect, right? A Jinx and Victor. It wasn't just a Jinx, it was two immobile hyper carries, and then everyone else is just trying to dive Deft. This is an awesome comp.
It was so sad. It was literally just one team fight where it was okay, we have a perfect, we're all on him, and it's okay, so Pawn just ulties into a team fight and literally just tunnels on North, because you know what? Who's gonna fight him?
Who's gonna stop him?
Who's healing for North? No one.
No one's gonna peel for North because no one should peel for North.
It's and it's yeah, Pawn played that really well, but also at the same time, it's he just pretty much the drafting. It was you're playing. If I were Aaron, it's yeah, you're playing Twisted Fate this game. It was it was their last pick, and it's just there's nothing stopping you. You just do it. Even though theoretically, if you have Victor is actually a really solid counter to TF because he just put down the gravity field where he's porting. But I guess they couldn't figure that out either.
Well, they had Xiang on Hecarim, which is
talking about the carousel horse meme is about going right, and when he his terrible Hecarim ults. But then it's just
Xiang.
I kind of feel when they put Xiang top, all the Chinese fans who made that meme are oh, we're sorry. Please
no.
We want going Hecarim back.
Something I want to ask, just kind of not even so much, to close out the episode, just something a good question, because I feel this is what I love Demacia Cup for, and it's the sneak peek going into playoffs. Since the entire bracket here was set in, to mimic the last playoffs, or at least just to get that result. Now, we didn't have all the players. You saw a lot of substitutions, so many substitutions. 90%, if not 100% of them, will probably be gone by tomorrow. But what does this mean? Are we I feel for the most part, OMG performed extremely well. Whether UZI returns to his throne, we don't know. But do you think that this is a good, sneak peek into the playoffs? Do you think that this is, obviously, I guess LGD didn't show as much as they should, and they will, but is OMG the dark horse to watch?
I think, the problem is that just OMG, until they do something about Jiyoung's champion pool and the way that affects the drafts, they can't ever be oh, this team's turning it around, they're going to be a top-tier team again.
And their approach to compositions generally also, just...
Yeah. But who's going to overtake them? Let's say, for instance, there's going to be three slots. Now, we don't know the brackets going into the playoffs, and it's not going to be double elimination. Sad day for all of us. But let's say if Snake was to go up against... Snake's pretty high up in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, if we're looking at the standings right now, the teams that would make it would be EDG, Chaogu, OMG, Masters 3, Snake, IG, LGD, and then Vici. Which I guess, based on our opinions on Vici, you could swap Vici for either, UP or RNG, depending on which one you think would make it.
Yep.
Okay. So Snake versus Masters 3, Snake would win that.
But
Whatever.
I mean, I
Too much
think
for now.
the two primary teams like that we're missing in terms of like, okay, who's gonna give, like, I think OMG, if they keep North and they keep focusing on like what they can do as a team now, what they'd have to do is A, figure out again something about Xiang's champion pool, and then B, just draft better in general, like even without Xiang, making sure that they're not doing these weird tunnel things and like ignoring what their own composition is doing. But I think Xiaogu, like not having Xiaogu in this tournament, not having LGD to their full potential, and then also not having M3 in there, like makes a huge difference in terms of how you'd be looking at playoffs overall. I think Xiaogu has definitely surprised me in terms of what they've been able to do and how they've evolved as a team. And I think like EDG, for all of their like, okay, we perfect gamed OMG in the last game and we swept them 3-0. I didn't think EDG looked like really super strong in the tournament overall. I don't know if you guys disagree, but like I think there's still like a ton of sloppiness coming out of that team that wasn't there previously, like last split.
The synergy thing. I feel like I've gone over this ad nauseum. It's just like Koro and Clearlove, their approach to team fighting. Clearlove's frontline lockdown is unmatched by almost anyone in the league, and Koro's backline zoning is unmatched by almost anyone in the league. So like when you have that pair, you always have the ability to come back in team fights. If you don't succeed your snowball, you can still win games. And I think that that's something that was missing, like that team fight control is something that they're missing still. And I think Amazing J doesn't have the self-sufficient agency of Koro and Lane either, so Clearlove's resources are split like on top and bottom side of the map more.
It's also interesting, like, do we know what's going on with Koro?
He's injured and receiving treatment. I don't know if and when he'll be back.
Okay,
there
the
has
only
to just be
reason
a hitman going after a lot of the LPL squads right now or something, man. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
The only thing with EDG that I tend to notice about their roster swaps is, like, earlier I give credit to OMG and to Snake in this tournament specifically for recognizing, like, pieces or players that are struggling in the meta and replacing them with other players that will do better. I don't feel like EDG has done the same with their specific roster substitutions. It's been a lot more, from what Aaron and like from what I think Sanchao have said, like they went into the season saying like, oh, we're gonna try to give our newer players like more playing time so they can develop, so they can mature as players, etc., etc. And since making a lot of those roster substitutions does come at the cost of your team synergy, it creates an interesting contrast with what we saw Snake and OMG do this Demacia Cup, where I feel like in certain ways it improved their synergy or just improved the way that they play in the meta, where EDG's roster substitutions haven't really done that, and it's affected their overall team synergy.
So if the teams would face
ending the show, let's go with shoutouts to keep my sanity. So Michael.
Okay. Shoutouts obviously to the panelists in Esports Heaven, and also a shout out to Stephen Yu. He's been doing a lot of really cool translations for Esports Heaven lately, and he also does some stuff with Team Liquid. He did a couple interviews with EDG before their set against OMG and after their set against OMG, and you get some pretty interesting opinions, especially from Clearlove, who I think like passive aggressively hates Baby. Because like he mentions that he feels so much more comfortable with Pawn in terms of like his DPS output that makes him a lot more comfortable on tank champions, but he doesn't really mention Amazing J and Koro. Just, I mean,
he said in previous interviews that he feels more comfortable with Koro too.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. But just the way it's worded, it's kind of funny. I think he was really not enjoying playing with Amy, and there's some interesting stuff there, so check it out.
There you go. And so let's go with Emily this time. Shoutouts.
I guess LOL Esports and Liquid Legends. I write for both those places. I am actually currently writing about the thing that I was harping on this show, which was like roster swaps and what SKT and EDG kind of learned from each other and what they have been doing ramping up for Worlds. So hopefully that'll come out soon.
Sounds like an interesting article to me.
Yay!
Yay.
Woo!
That's what I love here. All right, Kelsey.
Okay, so yeah, my favorite thing from the Stephen Yu translations, or maybe it wasn't a Stephen Yu, but the post-game interviews was when Fondra said that Xiang is like a top 4 top laner in LPL.
That team.
Well, just like looking through RNG, and I'm just looking through basically the matchups for the upcoming weeks up until like week 11, and it's not looking good for RNG or UP in terms of their matchups.
Yeah,
So
UP's got a lot of really hard matchups.
like both teams, not only do they have a lot of hard matchups, but they directly face Vici. So, I mean, they might just win like 2-0 Vici. You never know. Like that's actually kind of probable.
Yeah.
But the rest of their matchups are just going to be really downhill. While Vici actually has decent matchups, I think they should be fine.
How do we preface the decent matchups? Is IG really a decent matchup for Vici?
Okay, not so much IG, but they have to go up against King. Snake is going to beat them. They have to go up against M3. That's like going to be decent. And then they have to go up against, of course, UP.
Really?
M3 has been playing. I mean, Condi has been playing well. Like
Nade's
been showing up.
The best like Vici style does counter M3, which is if you just avoid fighting them. But at the same time, like how good has Vici been at doing that? Which,
yeah,
the answer is not super good lately.
And then Vici has their last game against LGD, who is in 7th. So I think they're either going to be looking to they're going to be happy like keeping their spot. So I think they're probably either gonna sack or go up. So it's like it's gonna be an easy game simply because of like rankings.
I just want to explain why I'm low on Vici Gaming right now, which is the narrative around Vici Gaming is that they're this rotation-based team that's not that good at team fighting because they have like not the best talent in their carry roles. And they're really good at moving to objectives, avoiding fighting, manipulating the lane swap to get advantages on their top laner, things like that. But lately, when I see them play, they aren't even that good at that anymore. They're like making the wrong objective calls, like even against Xiaogu, which historically hasn't been a team that we've credited for a lot of that. Map movement sophistication, I think, got the better of them in terms of objective prioritization. Using their mobility better. And for me right now, they're not the best rotation-based team in the league.
Yeah.
No.
So,
I mean, like, that would be a huge stretch. Like, calling them rotation-based is true, but it's kind of like trying to find a comparison to make here.
Well, that's a lot of the narrative that I keep hearing, which I want to challenge and say, no, they're not the best rotation-based team in the league.
For me, I feel like you can kind of
like
draw
I think LGD, Xiaogu are even better than that. I guess like the exceptions are in the second and third game, Aluka played Nautilus and Shen. So okay, woo.
Hey, that's a meta champion.
But the first game, well, he played meta champions all 3
Yeah,
games.
the first game, like literally there was like no engage whatsoever. It was just a bunch of carry champions. I mean, I guess like Spirits was like somewhat gagey,
played
but
Morgana, so that's about it.
Yeah, and I think he did like literally nothing that game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he ended with 0-0-0
sounds about right.
as his score.
Yeah.
But it's funny because in LPL, WE does that shit all the time, right? But they don't get punished for it. Like I remember actually watching with Raz, watching the WE versus Snake set the week before, and just being like, if they win with this composition, man, and then they did, and it was awful. But they just
won, but...
their approach to drafting seems to be, we'll just pick our best champions.
Yeah.
And I think in game 3 they had an actual composition. It was like a protect the Vayne comp.
So is this? I guess the answer to this is gonna be a yes. But is this really going to be a learning experience for World Elite? Will they take anything from this game? I know after the game the players looked quite upset. Obviously they're gonna be upset because they had actual expectations of moving, or at least just putting up a fight. So is this the point in which World Elite's gonna be like, well, maybe, because you can see it throughout the drafting, like throughout the set, that they were actually starting to pick reasonable champions, I would say. Is that the starting point going forward? I guess moving on towards the LPL, like I guess they don't even have a chance. Do they have a chance actually at the playoffs?
Not. I mean, we said this last split, right? And then they managed to eke in. But I think the problem with WE and your question is, are they going to learn from this? I still maintain that there's only so many avenues they can explore with the people they have on the team right now. And I still don't see, like, even for as long as this team has been together since, like, their IAM debut and then going back into LPL and managing to make playoffs, I still don't see them coming together as a team. Like, as we mentioned, their team fighting was, really bad still. And that's something that you can't do in the LPL and really be able to get anywhere. So aside from Spirit, again, being able to just, like, hard carry them on Gragas or Nidalee, I don't see them being able to make playoffs. I mean, it's not mathematically impossible as far as I know, but it's like to get the 2-0s they need is going to be incredibly difficult.
And this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think Spirit has been less consistent and less just overall hasn't had as much to bring to the table every game. I'm not going to say, oh, Spirit is the reason they're losing, but I just, like...
He's definitely not as good as Spring. Like, Spring was like a whole different beast.
Spring, yeah. Spring, he just, every game could go man mode and hard carry. And this summer feels like he has those games, but he doesn't bring that forward as consistently.
I also do think that people are starting to provide countermeasures against Spirit, though, so that he can't do those things. So, I mean, if you take out that part of the team's win conditions, really screws them over. And also, I mean, it's really hard to answer the question, like, will they learn from this? Because, like, they should, but history shows that they won't. Just because, I mean, I feel like
they have options.
I feel like Global Elite has some of the most draft freedom out of any team, based on how teams draft against them, and then even with that, they can't formulate good enough compositions or things that work. So, I mean, it's not going to get any more lenient as time goes on. It's only going to get more difficult, especially against other competing teams that would would also want to be in the playoffs. You know, so I don't know. I can't see any logical reason it would get any better from here.
And so, speaking of teams that will probably not learn anything from this tournament, Vici Gaming faced IG, and did they really face Invictus Gaming? Did they really?
It was a 3-0 closeout.
Yeah.
It's a tie. Zatai managed to sneak into their base and give
Mata
appendicitis for a 3-0 closeout.
So yeah, Mata got assassinated. No, he had some unfortunate hospital, visit. So Vici Gaming had to forfeit this match. At first, when I heard this, when I heard that this happened, I was like, "Is this real? Did he really actually have appendicitis?"
I had this conversation with Kelsey, and I was like, so. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, whatever, like, they're just making something up. But then she brought up the point that, like, appendicitis is something that's really specific and that you can actually, like, check on. It's not just like, oh, he has mystery illness.
He's injured.
Yes. He's not
now seems like a good time to check in.
Yeah, so I think... That was a good point. Like, and obviously then they showed pictures from the hospital, and I felt like a terrible person for not initially believing it. But
we have to be skeptical, is what I've realized with certain announcements. It's just you just can't trust some of them. Well, but
either way, throughout the course of the tournament, there was absolutely nothing we could have learned from the team because their literal only set was against Young Glory. So
yeah, nothing.
There's one thing that we can learn from them.
What?
Learn about them, which is that they're probably in huge trouble, because I feel like Mata is really the only good player at his position that they have right now. So
How serious is appendicitis, by the way, Destiny?
Usually you just get your appendix removed and then you're back.
Yeah, but you're still...
right? I mean, you're still in pain.
I think you're still in pain, and there might be an issue with like him being sedentary for the weekend. Like, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was out for this weekend, but he'd probably be back by the next week at the latest. But even so, it's just like...
That's still a week that they, like, desperately need him.
And they might bring him in anyway. It's just like... It's
not
just,
looking good,
even
then.
if they have
Only if they
mono.
wrap him up in, like, a cast. I mean, it doesn't even have to be relevant to the injury. They just have to, like, wrap him up in a cast made of dollar bills.
Like, how do we
Like,
feel about Vici Gaming right now? Like, because I kind of have gone on a rant about this, but...
Yeah.
I just
Scrambled.
I don't think they're good. I think they're gonna lose their playoff spot, so...
Well, Vici has to go up against IG next week, and then they have to go up against... Oh, that's kind of funny that they're going up against... They're actually going to face IG.
They're actually...
You can't get out of it.
I can't escape. Zatai's like, yes.
Zatai's tears.
Yeah, and there were a lot of people who said, why can't they just, like, a last-minute sub? Something like that. It's like, you really... That team without Mana? What are they gonna do?
They've already had so many issues with substitutes. Like, that's kind of why I'm looking at that team and, like, so we joke around about the whole, like, Amy's Revenge thing, right? And we're going to be talking about UP next. But, like, in comparing them just to their closest competition, so Unlimited Potential, like, Unlimited Potential has more of a team identity, and they've actually been playing together. Like, even if that team identity is just hard, like, manipulating them, like, manipulating all four other players to try to, like, win games, like, that's more than Vici has, to be honest. Like, they just look so uncoordinated and not, like, they can't play in the manner that they wanted to, which was kind of out-rotating people and doing small skirmishes instead of 5v5 fights. And when they can't do that, their talent that they have, like, it's really difficult to work with and come up with another identity with Dandy and top lane, and then the rest of them.
Episode 51 of China Talk. It looks like Demacia Cup is a thing of the past. It just ended, and surprise, surprise, EDG is the winner. But we're gonna start it off by really just listing out the teams, how they did, and it's gonna be in order for the most part of how they got eliminated. So of course, we start with World League. They had the hardest card. They had to avenge their brethren in World League Future. How did they do?
They had to avenge their brother.
And their
Future.
former brethren that they beat to get here in Masters 3.
Yeah, they had all of the WE, like the entire franchise.
Just
all their hopes
grouped
and
up.
dreams.
Rested in World Elite.
Yeah. What's the World League motto again? What's on their jersey? Something about dreams.
Keep your dreams.
Keep your dreams. That's exactly what they were thinking when they all just got eliminated.
Which is funny because Master 3 has a benched jungler named Dreams.
The moment that Keep Your Dreams logo came out, I was like, well, it would have been great if they kept dreams. But they didn't keep their dreams.
Gandhi's better probably, but
yeah.
Let's talk about this set. What were our expectations going into this set, first of all, though? The EDG versus WE set? Because I think before we said that it was going to be pretty close. So.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a lot closer than it was, so I was totally wrong on that. Because I actually thought, just based on previous history in playoffs, that WE somehow, and like even earlier this split, WE somehow managed to take a few games off EDG, but that did not happen. That was completely wrong.
Yeah. It's like a completely different story. I don't know, it is weird that, like, I mean, obviously they're nowhere near close to each other's skill and, like, actual just team dynamics and stuff, but
yeah.
I don't know. I didn't expect it to be a 3-0 shutout, that's for sure. Granted, some of the games weren't, like, terribly one-sided, but I don't know. I thought World Elite, like, a lot of the things that they looked like they were getting better in for LPL and stuff, they kind of, like, backtraced. Like,
yeah.
Team fighting was, like, really, really bad. and then they were just getting like humiliated by EDG early from jungle ganks and stuff, and it was just like such a huge backstep. I feel it was kind of weird.
Well, WE has this really bad habit of drafting compositions that make zero sense, and they just have everyone on some kind of carry type champion that will outplay.
Like the first game?
Yeah, like the first game, like the second game, like the third game.